Hey guys, Mwaiseni, what's good? I hope you're okay and welcome back to Chit Chat with Chit, where I talk about all things to do with money, personal finance, to do with sewing, to do with lifestyle and career as well. If you're new here, welcome to my channel, and if you've been here before, welcome back. Good to see you again. There's been something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and I just thought, okay, this is probably a good time to talk about it because as some of you already know, if you've been here before, like I talk about this a lot, I'm a locum. I just want to talk about emergency funds and why they're important and how you can go about starting your own emergency fund if that's not something that you already have. I really felt like I needed to talk about emergency funds because there's been situations where I haven't been paid on time, or an instance where when I did get paid eventually, it wasn't what I expected. In times like that, it made me think, what would be the situation if I didn't have money? What would I do? And that's where, if you don't have an emergency fund, for example, you end up going into your credit cards, maybe asking for loans or asking people for money, which there's nothing wrong with asking people for money. We all need a helping hand sometimes, but if you don't really have to, then you might end up having to do that if you don't have an emergency fund. So I just thought it'd be a good video just to break down what an emergency fund is, why it's important, and how you can go about doing one if it's something that you're comfortable doing. If I look back 2 years ago, having an emergency fund isn't something that I had, and one, I didn't really use the term emergency fund, but I know that in the last year, this is pre-pandemic, I started to really think like, okay, I really want a substantial amount of money in case an emergency happened. I've always had this mindset, but I've never been able to save money for an emergency. And because of the way I was brought up, because of the things that I've been through, I've always thought, okay, if something goes wrong, what do I do if there isn't money? If, for example, a family member needs money, how am I going to help them if I don't have money that I can go into? Like, it can cause a lot of stress and a lot of situations that you don't want if you don't have money to go into when you need to. And financial stress is one of the biggest things that I never ever want in my life. What is this? That I never ever want to have in my life. That is something that I've worked upon in the last year, definitely, because the pandemic came, and I think it's made a lot of people realize that emergency funds are important. Emergency funds are needed. And I think a lot of people were in a situation where they didn't really have that before, and it would have been quite difficult, especially if they'd lost their job. It would have been quite difficult. So I think if 2020 has taught us anything, it's having an emergency fund. But like I said, I was thinking of this prior to everything that happened last year. I'm going to talk about it obviously from being a locum. That perspective as well makes you realize, okay, have some money as a backup. And I think I mentioned it in this video here. I'm going to pop it here. I think it was the what you should know when you start a new job video. I think I popped it in there. So what is an emergency fund? An emergency fund is literally that money, or a fund for an emergency. It's basically just an emergency pot of money that you put away in a savings account that is easy access, hopefully high interest as well, easy access for when you need it. It could be anything from an unexpected medical emergency that you might need to pay for. It could be, people always talk about boilers breaking in your house. That might, be quite an expense. It could be, again, losing your job and you needing to dip into funds that you have to cover you up until something else comes up or you get another job. Or it could be your car breaks down. Like, all those little things or big things that you don't expect. It's important to have money just in case something happened and you couldn't just get money randomly from like a credit card or from a loan company. Like, you don't want to be in a situation where you put yourself in debt by not having an emergency fund. I think that's something to think about. That's literally what an emergency fund is. And I think another important thing to say is, I mentioned about having your money in a easy access savings account. I talk a lot about investing on my channel, and if you are going to build up an emergency fund, I wouldn't suggest that you start investing first. I would have an emergency fund before you invest, because, for example, if something did happen and all your money or emergency money is saved in an investment account, you might be having to take that money out when your investments are really low, so you actually end up at a loss than actually with any return on your investments or any interest on your investments. So that's something to think about if you are going to open an emergency fund. So how do you go about working out an emergency fund? So how I did it previously to have seen all these videos about emergency funds and actually calling it an emergency fund, I just had a figure in my head, because I don't really think there's a right way or a wrong way to do it, but I just had a figure in my head which I would be happy to have in my account just in case something happened. That's one way to do it, is to just have a figure in your mind. So for example, say £2,000. I want to save £2,000 and have it there in case I needed it. That's one way you can go about it. Another way that a lot of people do go about their emergency funds, and that's the way that I currently use actually, is by working out 3 to 6 to 9 months of your expenses. It can also be a year. It's whatever you're comfortable with, of your essential expenses that you have to pay for or need to pay every single month in order to get through. So if I base it on mine, so currently what I pay for, or what we pay for, is our council tax. We have to pay our rent, we have to pay our gas and electric, we have to pay our water, we have to pay our TV license. So all of that roughly adds up to like £750 a month. And what I have done is I rounded it up to the nearest 100, so £800, and I've times that by 3 to give me a 3-month emergency fund. Now, because all my bills are split, I actually have 6 months of emergency funds rather than 3 months. But if I had to pay everything and my partner wasn't able to pay for whatever reason in a month, I have 3 months worth of emergency funds. But if he's okay, which he normally is, and it's all good, I have 6 months worth of emergency fund money. So that's one way you can do it, is to take all your expenses, times them by 3, by 6, by 12, by 9, and that will give you the total amount of money that you might need to save in order to have that specific number of months emergency money saved. Another way that I think you can do it is, like I said, work out your monthly expenses, times that number by, say you're working out for 3 months, times that number by 3 months and add 20% tax. That way you've got that little bit extra, because let's not forget that during the months that you're not working, that you're not getting money, that you're, you know, living off your emergency funds, you still need to eat. So that 20% could be your food, basically how they calculate tax here in the UK. So yeah, add 20% tax, and that could be your aim of what you need to save, and break it down into how many months it will take you to save that, and then start putting money away into the savings account that you need to put money into. It will give you something to aim for, but it also give you a goal that can help you get started on your saving journey. Another way that you can work out your emergency fund is to literally work out how much your monthly bills are, add £100, times that by however many months that you want to save your emergency fund for, or how long of an emergency fund you want to have. There's so many ways that you can do it, but I think it's just important to say that an emergency fund is really, really helpful to have, and I think it's something that you should be able to have after you've sorted out your debts, or if you do have debts, having an emergency fund should be a way to make you not go into deeper debt, you know. So you can go into your emergency fund to pay off a little bit of your debt, but don't make it worse for yourself by going deeper into debt. So I hope that was helpful. I've already mentioned about where to save, so you need an easy access account, and obviously hopefully high interest. I know a lot of places where you can save easy access right now is not high interest, but yeah, have a bit of an interest coming, so your money that is just being stored away is doing a little bit of work for you, and make sure that it's separate to the account that you use every single day, because you don't want to see it and then you're like, oh, I got a little bit of money, let me try and buy something. That's not how it works. I mean, it's your choice, but yeah, I try to keep my savings separate to my everyday account, because then that way it's almost like I said, I always like to forget about my savings and only go into them and use them when I need to. And the best way to build up, or to start building up an emergency fund, is to automate your savings. When you've worked out how much you need to save for, say, 3 months, you can then work out how long you want that to take you to save, and then automate how much you need to pay into that emergency fund every single month in order to save up that amount. That makes it easier, you forget about it, and it's not like painful to put into, you know. Another way that you can save into your emergency fund is whenever, I don't know if you guys do budgeting, I budget, but I think budgeting is a great way to keep on top of your money, keep on top of your finances. So if you budget and there's 1 month where you've saved a little bit more, or you've got a little bit of money to take over to the next month, then you can use that money that is extra and put that into your emergency fund. Win-win. Another way that you can save into an emergency fund is I know some bank accounts have keep the change, which rounds out your purchases to the nearest pound, and every little helps. That money can be going into your emergency pot, and over time you'll just see that money build up until you're at your goal that you wanted to save, and you just be like, damn, I did it, and you'll be happy. Yeah, that's one way to do it, but make sure, actually, I'm not a financial advisor obviously, but when you are saving into an emergency fund and you do end up going into it and using it, so if your car has broken down and you need to get some new wheels, or you need to sort out the brakes, or you need to sort out the door or like side mirror that's fallen off, you need to remember that you need to replenish this money, because there's no point in having the money and then using it and then forgetting about it, because it will just go down to zero. Make sure it's being replenished. Obviously there's no set amount that you have to have saved, but adjust as you go along depending on how your circumstances change over time, because you might end up having to spend more some months, or spend more if you move to a house that's more expensive. The amount in your emergency fund that you need might be different for different situations, so you do have to adjust. And that is literally what an emergency fund is, and why I think it's important to have one, because as somebody who's on sometimes an irregular income, you can come across situations where you don't get paid when you expect to get paid, and when you do get paid, sometimes it's not the right amount. You have to do a lot of chase up of people, and you don't really know how long it might take. It's important just to be able to have money to dip into that takes the stress away from life stresses. So yeah, that was my video on emergency funds. I hope it was helpful, and hopefully see you guys on my next video, whenever that will be, next week. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, or make sure you follow me by clicking the subscribe button right here. I think it comes up, it pops up like here, but I'll also link it up here. So just make sure you subscribe. If you like the content, please drop me a comment and let me know what you think. I hope that was helpful, but other than that, have a great day. See you later.